yeah, I like to welcome you all to our panel called "What the fuck do we do now that we have thousands of rollups?" So a bit of the letdown. Right now we have 28, I believe, active rollups on l2bit.com, and 30 of them are upcoming, so not 1,000 yet, but it will probably be like that in like a couple of years. So yeah, I'm Hubert. I'm from L2Bit. We are making this analytic website about rollups, about their TVL, security, decentralization factors, and whatnot. And I will be your moderator today. So I would like to introduce my guest speakers. We'll have Sahil Sen from Quicknode, Kirill Fedoseev from Blockscout, Bogdan Habic from Tenderly, and Francesco Andreoli from Consensus. So guys, if you could just talk for a minute about what you are doing and the companies that you are part of works as well.
Sounds good. I can start. What's up, everybody? My name is Francesco. I'm part of the DevRel team at Consensus. I'm mostly focused on Metamask developer tooling with SDK and snaps. Yeah, but lately I'm also covering a little bit our ZK VM, Linea, and yeah, excited to be here. Belgrade is amazing, and yeah, thanks so much. How many developers do we have in the room before we're starting the conversation? Okay, sounds good. Cool, cool, cool. Awesome.
Hi, my name is Kirill. I'm the head of research of protocols research at Blockscout. Blockscout is the most widely used blockchain explorer, open source blockchain explorer, supporting all of these thousands and hundreds of different rollups, layer ones, and it's basically everything EVM compatible. So yeah, excited to be here.
All right. Hi everyone, I'm Sahil Sen. I work on the developer relations team of Quicknode. Quicknode is a tooling provider / RPC infrastructure provider. We provide RPCs and REST APIs for a lot of chains, almost 30 now. And we also have other tools like marketplaces where third-party API tools can integrate their APIs, and those APIs can be called right from the Quicknode endpoint, just like how Tenderly has one add-on which lets you simulate your transaction before actually sending the transaction. So that's an example, but there are other add-ons as well. So yeah.
Hi, Bogdan, one of the co-founders and CTO at Tenderly. For those that don't know, Tenderly is a full-stack infrastructure platform. So what does that mean other than a nice landing page? Tagline is basically we have tools or services or infrastructure to cater all the way from, hey, I have an idea, I'm typing it on my laptop, all the way to production. So simulations, as Sahil mentioned, RPCs as well, the main debugger and profiler of probably every team that's building in Web3 right now. Virtual testnet's a new thing that we released as well, and we integrate actually with all of your teams as well. So I'm very honored to be here.
The Tenderly snap.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we know, there are a lot of rollups. They are all dirty cheap. They are all very fast to use. And it's getting easier and easier to actually deploy one. Back 3 years ago, there was only 7 projects on our website. Right now, as I mentioned, it's over 50. So it's getting a bit crazy to track. All of them, basically you can use free open source software OP Stack or ZK Stack or anything like that to deploy one, or you can even use rollup as a service provider that will deploy the rollup for yourself. And most of the users are actually using more than one rollup, and you actually need to get funds somehow, send them between those different solutions. And so my first question is, with thousands of rollups that are not easily interoperable, how can we improve the user experience for those operating on different rollups? And what strategies, in your opinion, guys, can we use to make it convenient? Because I really hate when I need to send a certain token to the other L2, I need to basically search for 10 or 15 minutes to find a bridge that actually supports that certain token and that certain solution, right?
And hope you don't get hacked. Sure, let me start. So I would actually want to think about what the user means. So we have the users that you mentioned of, okay, I want to bridge here and do some DeFi stuff, play a game or whatever. I think there's additional users to a chain. So this is the developers building on top of this chain. This is the node operators, which are keeping the network safe or unsafe, depending on the L2. And then finally, you also have infrastructure providers, which you have here. on the panel, which are also kind of a user of this network. And I think the lower down the stack you go, the more fucked up it is. As in, I know people think bridging and other stuff is complex, but trust me, supporting a different VM or different RPC or whatever, what all of us are doing is also extremely hard to try to help here. When it comes to, I'm going to call it retail, even though it's not. Retail usage, I honestly think account abstraction at some point someone will nail that experience. I always give an example of, for example, Avocado from Instadapp, or those wallets that completely abstract away from which chain you're interacting with, and then also what is the underlying gas token. I honestly am a believer that stables should be used for gas, and that's it. And then for us, lower down the stack, I think we won't be able to fix it ever. It's a gloom future.
Okay, so do you want to add something maybe?
Sure. So what I think is that interoperability layer, which a lot of teams are working on, can be pretty good for an end user's perspective. Obviously, as Bogdan mentioned, it will be very much complex and very much like not easy for infrastructure level providers, but at least for the end users, the interoperability layer, for example, something like what Optimism is working on with OP Stack. So it's called Superchain, right? So every chain which is built using OP Stack or Optimism Stack will be able to access shared liquidity using that Superchain. So there will be very easier funds transfer and information sharing between the OP Stack chains. So I think something like that can be very helpful to improve the user experience for the end users. But still,
we already have Polygon AG layer, right?
Yes, exactly.
That is doing basically
exactly
the same
like that. Polygon AG layer or ZK Stacks hyperchains layer. So
or Cosmos IBC, by the way, for
exactly.
you.
So all of these are just examples, but still they are just for those particular ecosystems. So there are still some silos. So I guess I don't think it's going to get easier because there are so many chains coming up. The panel is all about that. So I don't think it's going to get easier because someone needs to solve this thing. The whole point of Ethereum or creating these L2s were to make development easy and were to make take one app and deploy on another chain easier. It is like that, but it's not actually like that. As you mentioned, bridging a token is not a great experience. It has security risk. It has waiting periods on OP rollups. A lot of time, if there's a dispute, you have to wait 7 days, etc., etc. So there is a need of like universal AG layer, probably. I don't know how even if that's possible or not, but if something like that can be developed where even OP chains can talk with ZK chains and so on and so forth, something like that will be very good for users as an experience. So that, like, for example, they can just use one app. For example, they can just use Farcaster and do a post on Farcaster, and that post can also be done on Lens. So that will be very nice, right?
But like, what about like security? Because if you have like one smart contract, for example, right, on L1 that is like responsible for liquidity for a couple of different chains, right? There is basically one single point of failure that may happen in the future.
Yeah, but there, I think it won't be just one smart contract, but a decentralized committee, like how data DA committee works, or like how right now there has been development on decentralized sequencer networks as well. So I think something like that will have to come, where there is a consensus community. It can be off-chain as well, but there is a consensus community which lets you do that. For example, I think Chainlink is doing something similar with CCIP, where they have a consensus node operators or validator operators for CCIP, which is off-chain, which lets you on-ramp and off-ramp across chains, no matter which stack it's built on.
I think you can even try their like main bridge right now, right? I think it's live, so if you want, you can do it. Yeah, maybe Blockscout would like to add something as well.
I mean, for me as a user, I think it makes it much easier to start using new chains, to start doing something, bridging tokens to them, and do something on chain whenever I just see already familiar interfaces, familiar protocols, and everything I have used already before. So it makes it much easier to onboard people from other rollups, and as most of the people are using more than one, so it makes it this level for entry much easier, much simpler. Whenever people are able to start using the familiar UI for block explorers, all the different RPC services, they see the familiar user interface and the protocol for bridging, some aggregator they used on other chains, so for DEXs and all the other stuff. So I think that some chains are just too focused on building their own in-house infrastructure, in-house forks of these different front ends, explorers, services, like protocols. And so yeah, instead of just launching your own Uniswap fork with your own front end, which is also a fork of something, so it's just better to have some unified access, which is basically to have some single interface which provides access to these different chains at the same time. So yeah, I think it's important to have this.
So is it like something similar to the stuff that Vitalik Buterin, I think, mentioned recently, to actually have something other than shared liquidity and interoperability providers? So basically like a governance-free tool that will like connect every single rollup out there. So
I think it can be both governance-free and governance-less. So it's not always about just the protocol itself. So protocols is just one part, the source code that is deployed on chain, but the other part is also just the front ends. So it's just much easier to use the same front end across the chain, even if the underlying protocols might be different, but at least if it's available in the same interface. So just, yeah, I think as an example, in the different DEX and preach aggregators, so yeah, if you go to LeFi or Bungie Exchange, they support all these different DEXs and breaches, and they work completely different. And for different chains, they have different breaches, but you see the same interface for selecting like one chain, one token, and then destination chain and destination token, and you just don't care what protocols are being used under the hood. And so yeah, this kind of abstraction level, it really makes it much simpler to onboard people and to start using it.
Can I ask a question?
yeah, sure.
So infrastructure providers are social proof in a sense. So when you see Uniswap is actually deployed by Uniswap to a chain, for me it's, for example, when I see Metamask Bridge supports a chain, I said I outsource the due diligence to you guys and stuff like that. I know it's similar for developers to Tenderly. They think it's not a shit chain if it has Tenderly, although that's not the case. We just might have not talked to them. Do you think as infrastructure providers that we should censor which chains we support depending on how safe they are?
It's not always possible to censor because, of course, we are also working in the open source world. So anyone can host Blockscout, for example, and you don't always know if the Blockscout is hosted by our team, by some Explorer as a service provider, or by some in-house DevOps team for a particular chain. So, yeah, I think it's quite a difficult question to in the open source world, since you don't always know what's hosted by who. Yeah, but anyway, I don't think censorship is a...
No, I agree. So I just wanted to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's always good to kind of delegate this security scoring to some alternative provider, like, again, this example with the DEX and breaches aggregator. So they display all these different quotes, but then they can also show like some aggregated security metric of the particular route, like how secure they believe this metric might be. Or like you can display some score from L2Bit, for example, for a particular rollup, just to inform the users of the particular implications. So I think this and the delegation of the security scoring might be a good approach.
Yeah, I also have one thought. So right now, whatever chains we integrate are kind of mainstream chains, right? But we are also moving towards the rollup as a service provider. So for those people who wants to launch their own chain, smaller chains, so for those people, what we are going to introduce is our legal team and our developers will do KYD, which is Know Your Developer. So there will be a process of KYC so that we do know that, okay, these developers are legit, we have their contract signed, we have the legal work done, etc., etc. Because and right as you mentioned earlier, right now it's so easy to develop a chain. Like you can just there are even user interfaces. You can just write the name. You can select number of validators, and there it is. You get a Docker container. You can just deploy the validators, and there it is. You have their own chain there. You can deploy tokens, scam people, etc., etc. So I think there is a need to some extent. Probably in the future there will be a very, I think, robust process of doing this KYC on chain. But right now it has to happen via contracts, legal teams, etc., etc.
Okay, so if only our friend Francesco could also add his 2 cents on the topic.
Yeah, I just want to pick up quickly. Like, I'm definitely excited about DIN, like this decentralized node infrastructure, where we aggregate this different RPC provider. I think that's one thing. And then to answer your question, like, I want to answer the question from the kind of like wallet angle. And I think like the first kind of like touch point for users is obviously like wallet extension. And I think like interoperability is definitely like a big core. That's why I'm also excited about everything around like snaps and non-EVM compatible snap, right? So when people first touch point that have even pre-configured like non-EVM, like let's say snaps on their extension, is super cool to see people like, I don't know, like adding their Solana snap or like the Starknet snap and starting to interact directly with the non-EVM compatible layer 2. And I think like it cut a little bit like all the other side of the medal where users like are super like, it's quite difficult also to onboard sometimes, right? And I think like coming directly from the first touch of point, and I think like one thing that was the lesson learned a little bit during the years is that you will have always, first, no wallet know exactly how the experience will be. You know that every user is coming from different background and different like use case focus. You will have always your DeFi heavy users, your non-EVM ecosystem compatible user, right? That is going from ecosystem to ecosystem. And I think you will start to have like kind of like diversified and pre-configured extension based on their needs, right? I think that's kind of like the way that I'm seeing things evolving. And the second thing is that we need to make users, but mostly like also developers in the community, much more like active, like active not just in terms of feedback, but also like active in building and extending our products. And that's like, I think, one also of big parts about this permissionless innovation. At the end, everybody of us is trying to also like decentralize much more our product as we can, right?
Okay, thank you. So, any of you wants to add something? Or okay, so my next question will be about something that you already tackled here. So let's say we fixed the UX, we fixed the UI. But as we already said, it's getting easier and easier to actually deploy a rollup, right? So like, how do we actually address the security concerns when some rollups are like highly tested, let's say, and secure, while others are like deployed by some guy, like from the street, let's put it like that, and like by the unverified team. And supposedly, like in the couple of years, probably 20% of rollups will be like very high level, right, of high quality, but like 80% of them will be probably like pretty much controlled by like some random guys that shouldn't actually be doing anything technical, because they're like business development guys or marketers or anything like that. Is this like a way to actually do something like that? L2bit.com, I think, is like helping with it a bit, but maybe you guys actually, I think like you mentioned this censoring thing, right? It's like, because like when we automate too much of a process, right? You can deploy a rollup with a couple of clicks, then you can basically deploy a new explorer with a couple of clicks, right? They can do it permissionlessly. Then it's like kind of very easy for bad actors to actually make like the whole scam chain, not only like a scam contract token or anything like that, but like whole chain could be like a trap for you.
But I think it's a very similar discussion during the one that we had during DeFi summer when everybody was doing a DeFi project, I think. Because when you think about it, at that point it was very easy, or with meme tokens now, it's more recent in our memories. Everybody can do a meme token. I honestly think right now it's maybe even easier to spin up a rollup than to do a meme token, because for a meme token you need to do a picture of a dog or something. For this one you don't particularly have to do anything. I think the answer depends, at least in my perspective. Is it like a short-term view of the world or like a long-term? For the short-term, I honestly think that we won't care. Blast is an amazing chain, but people did put a lot of money before knowing what Blast is inside. So you could argue that either the team is good, which is like all of the Blur ecosystem and everything around it, but then also people wanted to earn yield. This is why I compare it to the DeFi summer, because it was very similar. Like you would ape into a farm, you might get wrecked, you might not get wrecked, but you particularly didn't care that much about security. So short term, I honestly think that we won't fix this problem. I think we will have a lot of exploits of a chain going down, assets being stolen, and stuff like that, similar to ICO, similar to anything where there's money. Long term, I think it's a question, I think we'll tackle it a bit later, but like where the economy of the world is going to live across which chains, I'm not going to dive deeper into it. At that point, I think it's going to be part regulation. I know that's not a favorite topic of the Web3 crowd, but I honestly think that that's something that we cannot escape. Regulation, stuff like L2B, like the Know Your Developer stuff that you mentioned, infrastructure providers that have a holistic view of the ecosystem, also giving some score of, hey, this team actually is not, we know who they are nice to work with, we guess they won't rug you. So I think a bunch of this will actually be offset to this human aspect of it much more than the technical one, to be completely honest. Okay, and
any view from like the wallet side, like Metamask, for example?
Yeah, I mean, Tashi, you just said, like, you know who they are, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, this is an important question. I think this is not just a technical question, especially on the long-term run. Like, people and users and developers will trust much more the ecosystem that people are building to. Like, within, like, Linea, you basically, like, know that, okay, there is Consensus, the mother company around. You know that, you know, everything that's basically is happening around this ZK EVM. You have like also like a wallet around, you have Infura around, you have Consensus Diligence around. Like you trust much more like an ecosystem around, because you know if you're really looking at the short term, you see every week like layer 2's ZK EVM like popping up like every week, and it's very difficult to control. But also like I think it's very difficult. We are confusing users because a lot of people are. It's even like very difficult to make people categorize the layer 2 kind of landscape. Every time that we're giving a workshop, even like basic stuff, you know, difference around like what's an optimistic versus ZKVM, like people don't see really this landscape because it's also like there are too many layer 2s being shipped right now, and we see people that start to have assumption around, okay, this is just a rollup, this is just a layer 2, everything will be the same, it's just another one. But also like that's why it's very important to understand that it's not just a kind of like a technical roadmap challenge here. It's also about driving like an ecosystem with strong ecosystem partner and having like a little bit like dependency with other like strong vertical. And I think every player need to also like do their kind of have responsibility in activating also the right community to drive also like this user adoption. So it's kind of like a longer game through ecosystem and ecosystem partners, but all obviously like on the technical side too, right? But you want to leverage also the product that you have around you, right? Leveraging like developer tooling that are around in the ecosystem in the same time.
Okay, so like those poorer chains usually tend to also have like inferior infrastructure with issues such as a non-functional RPC, like my favorite one, like when we are doing L2bit.com, like having issues with RPC of some random L2 is like a standard day for us. Lack of updates, of course, right, and eventual disappearance maybe in like a couple of years or even faster. So how can we like, you know, manage and mitigate these problems? So maybe Quicknode could share their view on that, or Blockscout.
So I think having a good infrastructure provider or having a good RPC is only beneficial for the end product, end chain, because at the end of the day, it just improves the user experience of that chain. For example, you can build a very high quality, very high-end, very fast car, but if you use very low quality fuel in that, the car will have some problems. It may break down, the engine will have some problems, the engine will wear down very fast, etc., etc. So the user or the driver who is driving the car, they will blame the car, but not the fuel, right? So again, going back to the user experience point of view, so just just having high quality, fast, reliable RPCs or infrastructure for your chain, for your protocol, only helps to improve the user experience further, so that the users can actually see the full potential of your chain or your protocol. So I think it goes back to the user experience or providing a high quality user experience to your user.
Okay, so somebody needs to take the accountability, right, for this stuff, because when right now, I think I think Linea was down actually like a couple of days ago. Am I right, or am I missing something? I think one of the bigger L2s were down actually. So how does it look maybe from from the L2 perspective when RPC is down or infrastructure, there is an infrastructure failure? What do you guys usually try to do? How do you want to mitigate these problems for users? Do you want
Which
to
problem? I can't hear much with that.
For example, when the RPC is down, right? Or users can't use your chain for any reason. I'm just using Linea as an example, right? So what do you think, guys, that we should actually do? There should be maybe an announcement or some website like l2bit.com to actually not maybe use this particular chain for a bit. Or for example, there was this problem with Aevo, I believe, that this is like a DEX L2. So basically, people got liquidated because they couldn't access the network for some time because they had some open positions, right? So how can we mitigate this particular problem, in your opinion, if there is any solution?
Yeah, I think also you need to come also from the community, right? I think also as mentioned, this is a path to decentralization. So obviously we all want to decentralize sequencers, right? And I think also is a big part of the roadmap. But in the same time, we want to also safeguard users. And also it's a mixed thing, right? But I think also having companies much more agnostic, layer 2-bit, there are much more out there comparing agnostically layer 2 is educating much more users about specific not just technical things, but also how things really are, right?
Okay, so do you guys believe that having this quote unquote 1,000 chains is primarily due to the low costs of deployment, while the main economic focus, let's say, will actually stay on only a couple of them, like we are seeing right now with, let's say, Arbitrum, Base, and Blast, top 3 projects right now?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, first of course we have more of them because it's cheaper and it's easier to run them. I think there's a couple of things here. I honestly don't think that the world's economy is going to be across thousands and thousands of chain. Again, completely personal opinion. The reason why is if we don't fix the interoperability layer, which is such an overloaded term from decentralized sequencers to bridges to message passing, etc., the user experience will never be there. It won't make any sense for us to do it that way. I think that we're right now in Web3's history for the first time ever at the point where your chain can be where the main focus isn't the economy itself. What do you mean by this? Before, spinning up a chain would take dozens of engineers. So you would basically have to raise tens of millions of dollars to raise a chain. So suddenly you need to get the money back for your investors, be it an ICO, VCs, or whatever. So you will build something. That something is DeFi. Suddenly you're an economic layer, and this is how you got the Arbitrums, Optimisms, Polygons, etc. Right now, for the first time, you can have a video game, have an L3 or an L2, doesn't matter, that it's only using the blockchain as a database with certain properties, which is you can verify it. It doesn't have to have any value at all, and it will work. And I think that's what's powerful with this becoming cheap. The thing I mentioned before we talked, the thing that I hope will happen, a bubble that will probably burst extremely quickly, for example, ephemeral chains. So the idea behind ephemeral chains is to spin up a chain without the idea of it living forever. So if we think about it, all of the L2s and L3s that you're interacting right now with, we interact them with the idea that they will be there after we die, which probably isn't the case with 90% of them. Here, an ephemeral chain, the example I use, let's say the 5 of us are going on a trip. Splitwise is an app where we can track who paid for what. Imagine spinning up an ephemeral chain where we're settling everything over there, we're paying all of the stuff, we're bridging via CSAP or whichever other thing, the actual money there, and then at the end we spin up the chain and the last exit to the L2, underlying L2 is the money being moved around to whoever deserves their part of the money. So yes, definitely the current count is literally influenced by only it being cheap, but the reason why I think we will have much more than 1,000 chains is because now it finally makes sense to make a chain where you will never have a DeFi project, where you will never have an NFT marketplace, where you will never have anything that we've seen so far, but something completely new.
Yeah.
Okay, like counter arguments.
Yeah, that, and there's also another view of mine personal is that it is a new way of getting rich fast, kind of, because earlier, as Bogdan mentioned during DeFi summer, it was meme coins. Now it's chains, because there are tools available where you don't have to do a lot of R&D and research yourself. You can just spin up a new chain very quickly. It's cheap as well. Plus, people are earning a lot with sequencer fees. People are earning a lot with their native tokens. Because what it does is, if there is a native token of a chain, it automatically builds trust with people that, okay, this is not a meme coin, but a native token. So doing airdrops with that token and then eventually increasing the TVL for that token, I think it's a good way to earn money. So that's why a lot of these chains are doing that, which do not have a lot of projects on them, because you will see there are so many these new chains coming up. They will just have their own products developed by their own team on them for a very long period of time. And if they start gaining traction, then other products start coming in. But for some of them, that stage does not come, and they take exit with token earnings, and then they keep earning via the sequencer fees for whoever are using them. For example, airdrop farmers, etc., etc. So sequencer fees are a lot. People earn a lot with them.
You said you have a counter argument, I think.
I mean, like, for me, basically, right now, like, I'm just like asking the people around the conference, right, working here and there, and basically asking them about which rollups they are using, right? And most of them are saying that they are using, yeah, I'm using a couple of rollups, but I'm using only the ones that Arbitrum, Optimism, so on, so on. So like the ones that basically they, like the OGs, let's say, like let's put it like that, because they, you know, they had like early airdrops, they like got a lot of users, right? They have like this giant market share that is over, I think right now, if you like count top 4 OP projects and Arbitrum, there is like 80% of the market, something like that, right? So like it's basic, they are dominating everywhere, right? So I'm just like kind of worried that we might not see actually any bigger player coming from the ground like in the couple of years.
But
right?
I think we can poll the audience, for example. Who here uses DeFi? If you can raise your hand. Okay, and then who doesn't use DeFi at all but still transacts on chain? Please raise your hand. Okay, so it's like 3% of the audience. So I think that's the following the money part, what Gil is mentioning with the sequencers, which is the incentive for the chain to do it. I think it's also for other people why they do it. I think with that we're basically replaying one-to-one. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but we're replaying the cloud book that happened in Web 2. Because it was like, okay, you need to put the server in a rack and you can do it, but it's like millions and millions of dollars. Okay, suddenly we have Google Cloud and AWS, and then nobody asked the question of, hey, do we think that we will have more software companies now? I think we're just more aware that technology enables more companies to exist. And then suddenly you democratized, I hate this fucking word, it's so much used in Web3, but you democratized access to compute, to storage, to networking, and then suddenly software as a service started being a thing. So software as a service literally wouldn't exist if everybody had to do racks in their own basement. So that's why I think that.
We are always going back to the things like we are trusting the developers and the people behind that are not just OGs, but they really understand what they're doing. I think like these rollups as a service also, like they're fully democratizing like the rollup ecosystem, and it's super interesting what to see because people will follow ecosystem and strong thought leaders like around both infrastructure and like this kind of like ecosystem path compared like new rollups. And then the second thing is answering your question. I think also people will, especially like specific layer 2s, will be much more focused on specific use cases, right? And you see already now people like specific, like every game developer, they will choose a specific layer 2 because of like specific properties, right? Yeah. Same with like, I don't know, attestation services, same with like different use cases. So I think there will be much more diversity. Same as like, wallet predefined users, they are willing to use specific Snap, even like very security, aficionados that just want to have some security snap. You see only like they just want to debate the security snap, right? Same will happen with layer 2. And we see that already from the builder side, and I think like users will be the second part that will approach. You will have user much more heavy on, I don't know, they just care about, game, batch transaction, automatic sign-ins, and it will go directly with a specific like layer 2s. They're just customized for that type of use case.
I think Zora is the best currently deployed example of that, which is they optimize for the number of mints, which, by the way, most of them on Zora are free. That is something that wasn't possible without them having a chain, because you're competing with this for the same block space as with everyone else in this room who raised when they said I use DeFi. So that's why I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I don't want to bring up layer 3s, right? But you mean when you're looking at like Zora, like everything around like Warpcast and Farcaster with like dgen and the layer 3, you see that they are literally customized the chain on frame needs, actions, and like literally like exactly build for the like Farcaster ecosystem. And same with like NFT marketplace, and same even with specific like kind of like meme coin deployments environment with specific ecosystem. It's very interesting because the ethos is following, the technology is following the ethos, and the users that are following the ethos are automatically following the technology. That's why like maybe it's not even like anymore like a technology game, right? It's an ecosystem game, and who are the people that you trust behind, and they are offering also solid developer tooling around layer 2s. I think that's also one big part. Like you will go to Stylus because you're like a C++ strong dev, and automatically you will be there, right? Some people are coming like to, I don't know, they're speaking about attestation and they want to speak about, I don't know, Verax directly because it's with Linea, right? And there are different use cases, and people are also attracted by the developer tooling side. And I think this is a very self kind of like reflection. I think much more layer 2 should work on a developer tooling around their layer 2. Especially like on when I'm seeing like even ourselves, we're going sometimes to a hackathon, and like deploying stuff on Linea is 3 lines of code, right? Like I think like a smarter way also to approach like layer 2 bounties is going with like the developer tooling you're trying to build around the ecosystem, and that's the big value proposition to devs and builders.
Okay, so Kirill, you are quiet for some time, so I hope you have like a very strong answer.
I think there is also a lot of similarities between these rollups as a service providers and why a lot of different companies and startups might need it, between what happens just in regular Web2 companies and startups. Just once the Web2 company reaches a certain limit, just because of the different regulation requirements, security requirements, SLA and requirements, security, just different regulations, they start preferring using these different self-hosted service as a service systems on their own private clouds. So instead of just using the public version that everyone else is using, and I think it makes sense a lot to such companies to also start using their own rollups instead of just relying on the public infrastructure and to share the same block space and the same kind of properties with the rest of the world. So, and especially for these niche use cases with gaming and etc., I think it makes a lot of sense just for everyone to start launching their own rollups if they don't have any kind of friction in the user experience from the user side. So if users can use these rollups without even being aware that they're using a particular chain with particular RPC endpoint and chain ID, and they don't have to configure it manually, we have like a good account abstraction and so on in place, and people can just smoothly migrate and move from one chain to another without thinking about it too much. So yeah, I think it's kind of very similar between how the self-hosted world of software as a service providers in the Web2 world is working, and between what we're seeing in the Web3 space with these rollup as a service providers, how easy it is to launch your own rollup.
Yeah, any of you want to add something to that?
I think gaming already did it in Web 2. That's an interesting thing. So the Steam marketplace thing where you can sell a Counter-Strike skin, it is basically that. Or I think Ubisoft is the most convoluted but best example of this. If you, I think it's called Uplay or whatever.
I hate Uplay too.
Yeah, I hate Uplay as well. No, that's not the point, but I agree. Anywho, the point is that now they have this game X-defined, which is basically a shooter with all of their IPs in the single shooter. And then if you played, I don't know, it is The Division, and then if you played Splinter Cell as well, if you have certain skins in the certain other games, you suddenly have special skins in X-defined. That's basically, as you think about it, that you have like a Tom Clancy roll-up for Division, or you have, I don't know, a Far Cry roll-up for Far Cry, and then that would be an L3, and then the L2 would be the Ubisoft roll-up. Or if we want to go extremely far away, L2 and then L3 is the Ubisoft, and then L4s would be the games themselves. But we already see this from, if you abstract it enough away, it's already happening in gaming. We use gaming a lot here as an example. It's just that the underlying tech is shit, and then Ubisoft killing a game is also you losing all of your skins. But I think people are ready for it because they hate it, so I think we can fix it.
Okay. Okay, right. So maybe about more technical questions right now. So let's say that most of the developers right now, if you want to if you want to use a rollup, you probably use EVM because there are not like so many other virtual machines right now that have like a lot of users right now at least. So you have platforms like Arbitrum Stylus or Cairo VM, right, by Starknet. So do you think that the diversity and experimentation with so many options is actually beneficial, or it could pose the problems in the future? Because if you have a look at the, I think, Electric Capital developers' reviews, you see that like the solidity is still a king, right? There are like many chains that have their own virtual machines. So let's say, I don't know, Aztec VM, right? And Noir language, Fuel VM, upcoming Fuel VM with Sway, or the aforementioned Cairo, right, from Starknet. So is it actually a good thing, a bad thing? What do you think?
It's a good thing and a bad thing. No, I think what Arbitrum is doing with Stylus is one of the more interesting bets that's happening right now in the space, and I have a very strong opinion, and I'm ready to die on a hill. So we had alternative runtimes since more or less blockchains existed. How? Because you have a thing called precompiles. So these are smart contracts that are pre-deployed on a specific chain when it launches as part of Genesis, or it gets deployed as part of a hard fork. The catch-up cache function is an example of something being a precompile. The difference there is to what Stylus is doing is basically only the chain itself could add that into the runtime with a hard fork. So it had to be a consensus decision. While like Arbitrum, Stylus is basically because they're moving that decision to the user land, so to the application code as well. That because suddenly you can write Rust, you can write C++, you can write, I hope you cannot write Java, but you can write Java to write the smart contract, which should bring more developers in. And why I always use it as an example for precompiles, because they did a very good decision that in their virtual machine, and I'm saying this as an infrastructure provider, for all intents and purposes, that's a smart contract. It's not like some other chains are calling into another VM that's transpiling stuff, and it's extremely hard to support them. Again, talking as a tooling provider. But here, you can just consider it a black box. Like, here's an input, just give me how much gas you used and give me the output, and that's it. And I think that's like a very correct bet on how to do experimentation, at least now.
Okay, any other views on that particular thing?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of like developing your own virtual machine completely from scratch and disregard of the effort that has been spent on the development of the infrastructure and the tooling for the EVM and for Solidity and etc. So just because it's just starting from scratch. But I think, yeah, there is a lot of value on these different experiments, on different rollups with the particular kind of potential future directions that EVM might take, and we kind of can experiment on different rollups with different features, add stylus here, and the support for WASM. On Arbitrum, add some precompiles on the different rollup and experiment with a bunch of different things, and then just choose the most successful one and probably integrate it into the mainstream EVM version and make it available on the most of the rollups. So yeah, I think that's probably the best direction for evolving this system in the future, but just if everyone is going to start developing from scratch their own virtual machine implementation, then we're just going to stand on the same spot years over years and just don't move forward.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Right, so like one additional question about multisigs right now. Of course, if you are in the rollup space, you love multisigs. So basically, right now, most of the rollups actually have backdoors, right, to like force an update or anything like that if there is like a drainage by like some bad users or something. Basically, like we already mentioned, that it's super easy to actually deploy one using rollup as a service provider, or like going to Optimis, right, and becoming a partner in like their superchain initiative. And basically, all of these multisigs are like actually like shared between like couple of projects, right? So you have this superchain multisig for I think Zora, Optimis, or something else. You have this conduit multisig, Caldera multisig, anything like that. That actually, and actually, it kind of looks like they are like the power is like centralized in a bit, in a way, right? Like one set of addresses control like a couple of different chains. So even if you like, you know, you want to be secure, you can, because you need to use one of the 10th, and all of those are controlled by the single entity in theory, right? So what do you guys think about this particular topic?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, yes, there will be a consolidation of power. There is even now in the world, in terms of, in general, things as well, like fewer people hold keys to nuclear weapons, etc., etc. So there is a consolidation of power, and there is going to be that. But I think we can maybe democratize that process of choosing those people who hold key to those wallets, etc., etc. That's what happens with bigger DAOs as well, right? Where
like security councils and
yes,
so on, so on.
Where delegators are chosen and voted by the DAO or voted by the community. But then even that community have to be voted, that who will be the voters, etc., etc. But there, yeah, I think that's the way to go. But
so there are, don't you think there are like other technical maybe solutions to a problem with updates? Because for example, there is like one immutable rollup on L2B that is actually like, you know, they forked Loopring and they like gave up the keys, and they actually had to redeploy whole chain like 3 times already because they found out the bug and they like couldn't fix it in time, right?
So to me personally, I think that we are not at that point where everything can be automized in the industry, because to automize everything, it has to be algorithms. And if something goes wrong, for example, that's what happened with Terra, right? It started losing peg, and the algorithm was designed in a way, if from what I understand, that it will further decrease the value to like gain the peg again. And it never gained the peg, and it started going down, 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 and it never stopped. It was all programmatic, right? So that's just an example, but what I think that we are not at that point right now to automate everything. There has to be some level of manual touch, some level of centralization, because we are not at that stage right now. Even with sequences, people talk about decentralized sequences, but we haven't really solved the sequencer as a tech, sequencer as a validator, or sequencer as a single entity, and we are talking about decentralized sequencer. So that's the thing which bothers me about this industry. I really like this industry. I really like tech and everything, but that's the thing and that's, I think that's not just specific to Web3, but the entire tech industry, that you didn't solve this part, but you went on to build this part, and you kept on building and building and building, but this part or the parts below are still weak or still not developed enough. So I think since we are new industry, since the space is new, we do have that freedom or that leverage to change this way of working, to change this way of developing things, where we first at least, not perfect because nothing is perfect, but at least make something robust and then develop the further parts. So.
Okay, valid point, I guess. So maybe Consensus would like to add something, because you basically like connected to Linea, so it's like easy perhaps to have a say on that particular case.
I want to agree on that also. Like obviously, like the goal is to decentralize all sequencer and different like parts of like the layer 2. And I also like have the example of like obviously the allow list of snaps, but at the end of the day, also like you want to maintain a rigorous focus on defending kind of like users, literally like everybody what user thinks about this, right? So obviously it's a trade-off right now. It's the same with allowing do the allow list around snaps. right now we have a lot of snaps being developed, and a lot of DD is obviously like on our shoulder. But in the same time, we're working on a fully like open source attestation service so that also like Snaps developers today can start to attesting in specific like funnel of the due diligence, right? I think it will happen the same with different like, layer twos, and that's, I think, like super exciting. I think the only lesson learned here is that, obviously the goal is to fully decentralize the sequencer and specific like sub parts, but also like we need to understand that right now it's so early that if one full protocol is getting hacked, literally like all the ecosystem is getting like kind of like bumped, right? And I think we need to also understand that. That's why like I don't see like every time everybody's speaking about these layer 2 wars or something. Like I think like it's more about like we should get together to build more developer tooling that are satisfying, onboarding more developers. Because, like you touched on the Electric Capital report. There is 22,000 developers, 22,000. Starknet, for example, has what, 1,800. Like it's so small. And I think, stuff like Stylus, they're super helpful to onboarding more developers. And they're all like testing environments. Yes, maybe there is some trade-offs, but is helping to get more developers aware to start building with different ecosystem. And obviously, like at the end of the day, it's also like an accessibility, like how your ecosystem is accessible to developers, right? Like I saw like workshops run for some layer 2s that are run by, postdocs, like post-PhDs, right? Super difficult to get. And like we also need to understand we want to also onboard new developers, and also that we want to retain strong developers in those ecosystems. But we can't force people to do things, right? People will start jumping from an ecosystem to an ecosystem and coming back. Obviously, like Solidity is the first touch point, and then people will go more with more specific environments, right? And you always see that people go to Cairo, then they're coming back, they're going to Sway, they're coming back, and they're seeing like this kind of, at the end, is how is accessible your ecosystem, how much you can support. So it's also like a accessibility factor, right? Even like look at RPGs, how strong this method was around the supporting developers in the ecosystem, right? And I hope more players will follow like that.
Okay, nice. So no, yeah, like there are like many like for those like chains that have their own languages. Like the issue I see right now is basically you have these huge grants programs to basically come to us, like use our virtual machine. It's better than EVM in like some way, but then there are like a lot of frauds, right? Like people are coming there and they like want to build something, and the problem is that like the stuff that they are like throwing out is like super low quality, and then you go to like some like certain rollup, and like your user experience is like super shitty, like in a way.
Yeah, this is why also like the role of aggregating this information is super important around the ecosystem, because you have the responsibility to stay agnostic, but also like educate people around what really matters, right? Because if you take out all marketing and you have a very specific like product, there are also like other angles that you can see, and I think a lot of people are not aware of that. That's why the job of like a layer 2 bit or like different aggregator around our ecosystem is super important.
Okay. Also, we are like running out of time, slowly but surely. Maybe we could take like some questions from the audience as well. So if any of you have any questions about the stuff that we just talked about, we can give you a mic and you can ask them to us directly. So not sure if there is anybody. There are a lot of lights, but
after lunch, everybody's sleeping.
If there's no questions, I can.
Oh, I see one question, right? So.
Are you hearing me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you guys for panel. It's very interesting. Obviously, for ordinary users, each rollups is a separate blockchain. So a lot of companies provide start your own rollups, but they usually not provide basic protocols of these rollups. What do you think about this?
Anybody wants to take that one?
Yeah.
Why would they? But yeah, go. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's one of the big problems, and that's something we need to solve. So we we need to be able to quickly launch these essential pieces of infrastructure and protocols for newly launched rollups in the same simple way we can launch an empty rollup itself. So there is no much you can do with an empty rollup, so you need a rollup with a connected bridge, DEX, and all the different services like infrastructure providers. You need a block explorer, some debugger like Tenderly, and something like that. So all of these pieces should have a way to connect to this newly launched rollups in the most simple and efficient and, in the best case, decentralized way as well. So we need to find a way how these newly launched rollups can be integrated without big problems into the essential pieces of infrastructure and protocols, so that this can exist and the protocols themselves and the chains themselves don't have to figure out on their own how to deploy a certain bridge or DEX. It just should come as a package deal or some sort.
Yeah, maybe this is a question to everybody, right? Do we have enough like developer tooling, or what tooling you guys want to see more?
What type of tooling we want to see more?
Like any like new tooling that you see like they're necessary for.
Like I'm dreaming about, like, for example, one explorer for all of the different L2s that I wouldn't have, because like right now at my job, like sometimes you need to go for look at the testnet of a specific project on the mainnet, right? You have a couple of them, and basically right now how it works for Blockscout, I guess, right? You are like deploying different explorers for like different chains, right? This is like I need basically to have like a couple of tabs open, right, to take care of that, and it's becoming like pretty annoying from time to time. So like I guess like having one opus magnum for like every single chain would be something great, but
just use Tenderly. Like for the past 6 years, you paste in the transaction hash, and we find now it's like across 40 EVM chains or something. It's going to be more chaotic, but like if you're searching for a hash or an address, I think the problem that we're not solving and that I hope Blockscout will solve is having a holistic view of your chain stuff across everything. So, and we use portfolio trackers right now. So you would either go to Zapper, or you would use Metamask portfolio or stuff like that to figure out like what's actually happening. That's portfolio tracking. Again, in the end, when I play a game or do whatever, is that the correct way? And that's what I hope, for example, with Snaps is also going to happen. Like I can install stuff into my wallet that's going to give a more holistic view.
Okay, and maybe Blockscout can defend as well in this view. Like,
yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of like centralization concerns as well. If you have like the single explorer that everyone is using, and it's the same, and there's a single virtual machine that indexes everything, and if it goes down, then everything goes down. So it's definitely good that you're able to launch Blockscout in different like infrastructure and different clusters on different infrastructures for different chains, and then so maybe the answer is that we should just build some user interface level on top of Blockscouts that will connect all of them together on just the UX side, on the user experience side, and with some sort of portfolio tracker or something like that that will allow this certain multi-chain capabilities.
I think we have a lot of portfolio trackers right now, like, for example, debunk and so on, but like my main issue with those are that they are like, I think they are gathering all the single piece of data about me that they possibly can. Like, this is I would like to have like something that, you know, I can use like just for like one single transaction, for example, right? Like I will see like, let's say there was a one chain of transactions from like rollup 1 through rollup 2 to rollup 3, and I would like to basically don't leave a single page to actually see the whole process, right? So I don't need to jump around like from the page to page to actually like know what is going on, right? So this is my personal like view, right?
Yeah, on a similar note, I'm super excited about Dean, right? This decentralized node infrastructure, because, you know, like democratizing also like RPC is a big part of the game, especially because users require, you know, specific like latency, and I think like one of the big space they were still like didn't really democratize or decentralize it, like the full RPCs, right?
Okay, so I hope like we answered the questions and we added something to it as well. Is there any other question of the audience? Don't be shy. You can ask anything. Okay, we have one there on the middle.
Okay, so I was intrigued by this idea of like ephemeral rollups and ephemeral layers. But if you're going down this like rabbit hole of like, okay, you have L2s. L2s have certain specific security guarantees that you can follow. Then you have L3s that are based on top of L2s. And as you go down this path, where do you think that these trade-offs start to accumulate to the point where you get something that's actually worse than just a straight-up centralized solution? Or am I just missing something here? Like,
I think it's at the point at which you care. Now, let me dive a bit deeper for this. So, using Splitwise as an example, you're with a friend group. It's not like all of us who don't know each other are trying to settle some amount of money. So if we all wanted to settle a certain amount of money between us, I would probably use an L2 for it. For Splitwise, I'm going with like 3 of my best friends or whatever. So the trust isn't in the underlying tech. The trust is in like knowing someone for 20 years. When it comes to, yes, I mean, there's definitely at some point if you go high, I look at layers up. I know a lot of people look at them down. But for me, if you come to L8, you're like, does this make any sense? Did they lose all of the guarantees that made blockchain? Maybe yes. I mean, it also comes back to the question of, you mentioned when you asked the multi-sig question, I think a larger problem is like Jeff Bezos, while flying on a rocket and throwing a Prime package down, can just turn off blockchain on AWS and like we're all fucked. I mean, that's the current state. Like most of the infrastructure providers, or almost everyone is using AWS. In the case of us transacting on Splitwise on L5, maybe my phone is a node. So that's why I know I won't lose data. So I'm only using the data availability aspect of the blockchain, and that's what I care about. The trust is between me and my friends. If we're doing something else, maybe I only care about the cryptographical part of it and not about the data availability stuff. For example, use Mina protocol for something. So I care something is verifiable, but I don't particularly care of having the historical context of it. So I guess the question is, it depends. I don't think that we will go over layer 5. I think Starknet did a blog that I agree with. They argued for like 4 or 5 layers. I cannot remember right now.
Like layer 4 is like the end game. Like
yeah,
no going further.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and actually we also ran out of time. So thank you very much for being here with me. I hope you learned something about L2s and rollups in particular today. And if you want to ask some more questions, catch us during the conference. We are more than happy to answer all of your concerns. So thank you very much for having us today. Thank you.
Thanks.